Profiting off a painful past. That is the accusation being made by a Norwich woman in a lawsuit against Harvard University.
Yeah, that woman is a descendant of a man in one of the photos. News 8's Tina Detel met with her today and tells us she wants this case to be exposed.
It's been a busy couple of days for Tamara Lanier, who took action which has been years in the making.
RENTY is my great-great-great-grandfather.
We first talked to the Norwich woman about RENTY back in 2014 as she tried to get Harvard to give her the daguerreotypes, a type of early photograph she says were taken of him and his daughter Delia in 1850 when they were slaves in South Carolina.
I have U.S. Census information that connects me to that slave.
At the time, Harvard said she didn't have the evidence to show the man in the pictures taken by Swiss scientist Louis Agassiz was her relative RENTY. So this week, she filed a lawsuit against Harvard.
I'm excited about this case because all of that will be exposed.
You want people to know what his thoughts are when he took these pictures?
Yes, and Harvard's complicity in slavery as well.
She says the pictures were taken to prove black people's biological inferiority and to justify slavery. The lawsuit says, at Agassiz's behest, RENTY and Delia was stripped naked and forced to pose for the daguerreotypes without consent, dignity, or compensation. The suit makes many claims about Agassiz. The brain of a Negro, Agassiz announced to the men gathered in the Charleston Literary Club, is that of the imperfect brain of a 7-month infant in the womb of a white.
RENTY had access to the Noah Webster speller, and he was a slave who taught himself to read and would teach others.
Lanier says Harvard has profited from the images.
I want them in the public domain where everyone can have access to it, where the true stories can be told.
We did contact Harvard to get a response to this lawsuit. We are waiting to hear back. In New Haven, Tina Detel, News 8.
This is Pastor Jerry Carr III. I was just referencing some information with you, and I want to give you an inside tip here. We are obviously in this hour of our cultural awakening, understanding that we are the biblical remnant of the seed of the children of Israel. We are Hebrew Israelites according to the scriptures, holy scriptures. And I want you to understand that there is also another process in this country, ADOS, Americans Descendants of Slaves, and that politically correct term or acronym is causing a lot of feathers to be ruffled. So let's see. We have a $40 billion. Do you hear that number? A $40 billion wealth institute by the name of Harvard University. And they are yet profiting off of slavery. You hear that? Harvard University is yet profiting off of slavery. So I want you to see here, it says that this is a creator, contributor, Zili J.T. This action was taking place in the 1850s. An American creator photographer. The creation date was March 1850. Okay, this type of artwork or this type of photography was described as daguerreotype. Okay, daguerreotype. So I want you to go down where it says subjects. It says portraits, slaves, men, ethnographic photographs. Okay? The material or the technique that was used to take this picture was called the daguerreotype. Okay? Daguerreotype. Daguerreotype. You can look up that word and you'll get more in-depth information on what a daguerreotype is. Now, I want you to go to the notes. It says in the inscription, this is the paper label, Jack Driver. He's out of where? Guinea. So we know it's from the west coast of Africa. Okay? He's on the plantation of B.F. Taylor in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, they are making a profit on this they're making a profit on this slave plantation, and as well as this slave or enslaved individual ever since the photograph had been taken. Okay, how do we know? Because it's held in the repository and Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology archives at Harvard University. Okay, now check this out. The family of this man, they are alive right now. Okay, they are alive, and they are aware that Harvard University is doing this. You see the rights, legal rights, the legal rights, meaning that the legal ownership of this individual is yet at the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology, photographic archives. Check what Harvard is saying. This image may not be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, or without permission in writing from the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. Okay, it's the president and fellows of Harvard College. Okay, it's the copyright. Let me read this again. The rights, okay, the ownership of this enslaved individual is owned by Harvard University in 2019. Okay? Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology, photographic archives. This image may not be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, without permission in writing from the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. The copyright, the president and fellows of Harvard College. So the president and the fellows of Harvard College are slave masters. They're slave owners right now as we speak. Let's click on this link and see if we can get this photo. You see that? You see that? You got to sign in. That means you have to be a paying student in order to obtain these photos. And if you're not a paying student, you have to have written permission. You see it says this image right down here where it says use restrictions. Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology, photographic archives. This image may not be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, without permission in writing from the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. This is the copyright of the president and fellows of Harvard College. Okay, so I want you to understand, I want you to get this understanding. This is yet a $40 billion wealth program right now. The highest elite education in this country is a Harvard education. This highest elite educational institution in this country is sitting on $40 billion of wealth. And they are yet turning a profit on enslaved individuals that came over here on slave ships. They are yet making money on our ancestors, even while they are in their graves. Understand what I'm saying? See this right here? www.penn1.harvard.edu. Refuse to connect. That means that they blocked this photo from becoming available online electronically. So happens I can see him a little bit. You see that? See this man right here? He's under subjects of portraits, slaves, men, ethnographic photographs. They entitled his name as Jack. Okay? And this photograph is a picture of a man that is enslaved at the time, forced to disrobe, forced to remove his clothing, and made a mockery of. And Harvard is profiting money off of this enslaved individual right now as we speak. And here is another photo. Okay? This was taken during 1840, between 1840 and 1860, which is the time in this country when our ancestors were chattel slaves. They were literally human property. They were human, or not even identified as human. They were identified as one step above an animal, but yet an animal. And Harvard is right here, right now in 2019. They are making a profit on exposing and showing pictures and images, showing daguerreotypes of our ancestors. You hear what I'm saying? They're showing these graphic photos. Why is it a graphic photo? Because I'll show you. The other people that they have in these photos are not disrobed. You can see around this young boy's waistline that his clothes were removed and wrapped around his waist so they can observe his physiognomy, so they could observe his skin and his genetic structure. How do we know? You see that? During the same exact time, between 1840 and 1860, this is an unidentified Chinese boy. He's fully clothed, right up to the shoulder, right up to the neck. How else do we know? This is a Chinese girl during the same exact time, unidentified name, but guess what? She's fully clothed all the way up to her neck. But when it comes to our ancestors, they make them strip down and make a mockery of them so they can make humorous jokes about the features and the physiognomy and the residual insults of our people as chattel property. So look, let me show you this as well. So you see this young man fully disrobed to his hips. Now look, here you go with what they described as an unidentified Native American man and woman with a child, and they're fully clothed. These are not our ancestors. Picture describing other people fully clothed, okay, during the same time of slavery. Now I'm going to show you. Don't forget this guy right here, right? His name is Jack. His name is Jack. He was a slave. Okay? Now let's scroll down. Now I'm in their archives. Okay, this is they're not going to be able to deny this. I am in the Harvard archives, harvard.edu. Now, you see this guy right here? His name is Renty. Okay? He's also described, look at it, they disrobed him. He's also described as a slave. Okay? Also described as a slave. I'm going to show you something else. And this is DELIA. This is Renty's daughter. Okay? Look at what they did to her. They've made her disrobe herself so they can make mockery of her. Okay? Facina, another, see that? Slave. Facina. Okay? They've disrobed him. The same thing. This is Facina again. They made him turn to the side. Okay, now check this out. An unidentified Chinese man, during the same exact time, he's fully clothed all the way up to his neck. Okay, this is an intent to dehumanize and emasculate our men and completely demoralize our females. So we would look at our people today, and that image that we see of them right now on display being sold by Harvard University right now. Okay, Harvard University is selling our ancestors right now. They're selling them. This guy named Renty, okay, his ancestor found him. And there's a big issue going on with Mr. Renty, okay, because his ancestor is speaking out. Okay, you see, I'm on their harvard.edu daguerreotypes, and you see they blocked the photo. Okay, and they are yet selling Mr. Renty. How do we know? Because they own the rights. You see this right here? I just read that to you a few minutes ago. They own the rights to that human property. The human property is the fact that they used him as a piece of property to describe a form of mockery, a form of subhumanism, and a form of mental ethnic programming and racism, and also segregation, to justify racism at its highest level, supremacy at its highest level. And this is under the ownership of a $40 billion educational institution in this country that is the elite of institutions, and also the copyright is under the auspices of president and fellows of Harvard College. So therefore, Harvard College, Harvard University, Harvard Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology, Photographic Archives, they are or should be held fully responsible for yet selling slaves, yet making a profit off of slavery. So you see, if Harvard actually says, hey, you know, we're going to give it back, we're going to stop this, we know we are wrong, we know we are making a profit on slavery in 2019, we know that we are yet selling Negroes in America, we know that we are yet lauding, okay, L-A-U-D, we are lauding professors and alumni that are dead in their graves. We are giving them high accolades, okay? We are giving them high accolades for their racist, incendiary, slimebaggery books and publications, and also pseudoscience, pseudobiology, criminal behavior, outright criminal behavior that was performed on our people. We are actually going to remove these people's names from our publications. We're going to remove them from identified as a well or highly regarded alumni. We're going to remove their status, because if we do not, we are yet feeding the hand of slavery. You see, if these accusations are not brought up against these education institutions, then what happens is they will continue to do it. Okay? They will continue to do it, because the scripture says these are the things that people have done, the Gentile heathens have done to our people, the children of Israel, and they hold themselves not guilty. So we see now that we have an issue. Finally, as of March 20th, 2019, there's a complaint and a jury, a demand. There is a plaintiff. Her name is Tamara Lanier. And Tamara Lanier is a young lady that is a direct ancestor, descendant, however you want to identify her. She is a blood relative of Mr. Renty, okay, and Miss Delia or Delia. Okay, now she brought a lawsuit in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, public record. She brought a lawsuit against Harvard University, and the lawsuit is against the president and the fellows of Harvard College, a.k.a. Harvard Corporation, Harvard Board of Overseers, Harvard University, the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. So I want you to understand, this is possible. It is possible that you can legally hold these institutions accountable for this type of behavior, for continuing to promote and profit off of slavery in this country. So the plaintiff, Tamara Lanier, brings this action against Harvard for its wrongful seizure, possession, and expropriation of photographic images of the patriarch of her family, a man known as Renty, and his daughter Delia, both of whom were enslaved in South Carolina. The images, known as daguerreotypes, were commissioned in 1850 by Harvard's leading scientist Louis Agassiz as part of his quest to prove black people's inherent biological inferiority and thereby justify their subjugation, exploitation, and segregation. At Agassiz's behest, Renty and Delia were stripped naked, as you've seen in those pictures, stripped naked and forced to pose for the daguerreotypes without consent, dignity, or compensation. So Harvard is making money on this right now, people. The responsibility for that crime lies squarely with Harvard, with elevated Agassiz to the highest echelons of academia and steadfastly supported him as he promoted and legitimized the poisonous myth of white superiority. Okay? Harvard has never reckoned with that grotesque chapter in its history, let alone atone for it. As of March 20th, 2019, Harvard's website describes Agassiz as celebrated and charismatic and lauds him as a great systemist, paleontologist, and renowned teacher of natural history. Historical amnesia, particularly where racism is concerned, is an American tradition, but Harvard's transgressions run much deeper. Pull this up. You're more than welcome. This is a public record. You see, it says here in line 16, okay, that slavery was abolished in 156 years ago, but Renty and Delia remain enslaved in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Their images, like their bodies before, remain subject to control and appropriation by the powerful, and their familial identities are denied to them. This is something that is ongoing. It never stopped. It never ended. This lawsuit seeks immediate restitution of the images from Harvard to Ms. Lanier, just damages, and other legal equitable redress to be determined by a jury. It was an act of both love and resistance that Renty and Delia's kin kept their memories and stories alive for well over a century. It is unconscionable that Harvard will not allow Ms. Lanier to, at long last, bring Renty and Delia home. So you see right here, okay? This is something that makes me sick to my stomach, man. It's just like somebody take a picture of one of your family members, okay, someone who's not related to you. You know, today they call that paparazzi if you're famous. They take a picture and they sell it to media. All right. Well, it's the same as someone taking a picture of your child or of your family member, and they put that picture out to the public, and they actually make a profit on it, and they never look for you to give you any of the proceeds, nor did they look for you and seek your permission to authorize those photos to be put out to the public. Okay, so you see how this works. This is yet selling somebody. Okay, this is, you know, selling a human being. Okay, making a profit on the bondage of a human being. That's yet slavery. Harvard University was founded in 1636. It's a private educational institution based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The president and fellows of Harvard College, also known as Harvard Corporation, and the Harvard Board of Overseers govern Harvard University. So you see, these people are the slave masters. Yet, slave masters. Okay? The Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology is owned and controlled by Harvard. From 1847 until his death in 1873, Louis Agassiz was an agent and employee of Harvard. So you see here, line 68. Not coincidentally, Agassiz was invited that year to return to Charleston for a meeting of the American Association for Advancement of Science. He delivered a paper at the meeting in which he explained the racial groups viewed zoologically could not be considered part of the same species. After hearing Agassiz's lecture, a fellow polygynist, wrote excitedly to Samuel Morton. Samuel George Morton was a zoologist, and also he was a physiologist, and he studied the anatomy of skeletons. Samuel George Morton documented that Negroes in America are, by their genetic makeup, their cranium and skeletal structure, they are the same exact slaves that was in ancient Egypt. Okay? During ancient times, he says, they are the same people that were slaves in Egypt during ancient times. Now, he discovered this and came to this conclusion by measuring the craniums. And he wrote a book that was entitled Crania Ægyptiaca. So Samuel Morton in Philadelphia with Agassiz in the war, the battle is ours. For Agassiz, the final frontier in the battle to establish the legitimacy of polygynism or polygynism. This is not polygamy or polygyny. This is polygynism, or they're polygynists based according to superior genetics. All right. The legitimacy of polygynism was a collection of empirical data. Agassiz was singularly focused on perceived physical differences between whites and blacks. He had written with a frightening lack of humanity about being repulsed by black people's thick lips and grimacing teeth, the wool on their head, their bent knees, their elongated hands, their large curved nails, and especially the livid color of their palms. Okay? Fueled by this racist obsession, Agassiz sought what he believed would be the passé de résistance of his scholarship, enduring photographic evidence of the otherness of the black body. This was newly possible thanks to an invention known as the daguerreotype. I want you to make sure you remember that. Daguerreotype. That's the first photographic system that was supposedly invented in this country. The daguerreotype process, the first ever publicly available and commercially successful photographic process. Agassiz embarked on a tour of South Carolina plantations in search of subjects for this endeavor, racially pure slaves born in Africa, a dwindling population since the ban on the importation of slaves in 1807. With Morton's help, Agassiz was introduced to Dr. Robert Gibbs, a wealthy South Carolinian who rubbed elbows with the slave-owning elite. Gibbs took Agassiz to several plantations, including the B.F. Taylor plantation in Columbia, where you've seen in the Harvard archives that they have the reference for the slaves on the plantation, the B.F. Taylor plantation in Columbia. Okay? So at the Taylor plantation, Agassiz selected several enslaved men and women to be photographed. One was an older man named Renty. Y'all remember him. Another was his daughter, DELIA. To Agassiz, Renty and DELIA were nothing more than research specimens. The violence of compelling them to participate in a degrading exercise designed to prove their own subhuman status would not have occurred to him, let alone mattered. Agassiz would never know that he had selected a man whose life and accomplishments, even within the crushed constraints of slavery, made a profound mockery of his theories. We know that today, nearly 170 years later, because of the resilience of Renty and his descendants and the power of oral history in preserving their family in the face of a system designed to obliterate it. This is part 2. Always remember, we're Taylors and not Thompsons. This is what Tamara Lanier, she grew up hearing her mother, Maddie Thompson Lanier, repeat the words like a mantra. So she grew up knowing, okay, their history, 150 years of their history passed down to them. All right. So I want to scroll down to another part of this document. Okay. I want you to see right here, 96. Frederick Douglass wrote that genealogical trees do not flourish among slaves. A poetic summation of slavery's brutal and calculated assault on the integrity of the black family. 97. Slaves were not permitted to use their own family names. That's part of our heritage, right? A policy enforced through violence. A report commissioned by the federal government after the Emancipation Proclamation noted that the slave was not permitted to own a family name. Okay? Instances occurred in which he was flogged for presuming to use one. So you see, when our ancestors were trying to reclaim and or use their Hebrew names, their ancient Hebrew names, they were flogged. They were beaten. The names were beaten out of them. They had to assimilate or take on the names of the slave masters. See, in 98 it says, forcing slaves to adopt the surnames of their masters made it easy to identify to whom slaves belonged. More importantly, it denied enslaved men and women the basic humanity of having their families recognized and prevented them from locating loved ones who had been sold and forced to assume new surnames. You see, this is a masterful program by, we know, the Willie Lynch system. We know it's called Code Noir. We know it's called Black Code, or, you know, Code for the Blacks in this country. It's yet in effect because none of us have our ancient Hebrew names. We're all using European names that came off of the plantations. Look into these universities that are in your neighborhoods or in your cities and states and find out what are they profiting yet today on slavery. So line 107, it reads, in the winter of 1850, on Agassiz's orders, Papa Renty was led into a plush photography studio in Columbia, South Carolina. The studio belonged to photographer Joseph T. Zealy, who was known for his portraits of society women. The space, designed with their comfort in mind, included an elegant parlor and a piano. Renty was ordered to disrobe. His daughter, Delia, was stripped naked to the waist. Zealey positioned Renty and Delia in various poses, okay, and photographed them from the front, side, and back in accordance with Agassiz's instructions. Now, I want you to understand something. If you have someone who is naked, that is exposing their bodies, and you take a picture of them from the front, the side, and the back, today that would be called pornographic, right? That would be called sexual exploitation, right? Okay, so let's continue. The completed daguerreotypes received just the enthusiastic reception Agassiz hoped for. He says this: I have just finished daguerreotypes for Agassiz of native Africans of various tribes. I wish you could see them, Dr. Gibbs wrote Morton in June of 1850. He noted excitedly that Agassiz had found enough evidence to satisfy him that they have differences from other races. The next month, Agassiz published the results of his research in an article entitled The Diversity of Origin of the Human Races. In it, he referred to his recent study of black bodies, the insight he had gained as a result. The writer has of late devoted special attention to this subject and has examined closely many native Africans belonging to different tribes and has learned readily to distinguish their nations without being told whence they came, and even when they attempted to deceive him, he could determine their origin from their physical features. Agassiz went on to describe with the detached voice of an empiricist the essential characteristics of Africans as submissive, obsequious, and or imitative, possessing a particular or peculiar indifference to the advantages afforded by civilized society. You hear the disgusting content that this guy is saying? He says here in line 131, he says, perhaps most destructively, Agassiz warned, social equality I deem at all times impractical. It is a natural impossibility flowing from the very character of the Negro race. They are incapable of living on a footing of social equality with the whites and one and the same community without becoming an element of social disorder. This toxic ideology, disguised as science, would be used to rationalize and justify 100 more years of legally sanctioned segregation, ghettoization, and discrimination against black Americans. In the aftermath of the Civil War, Harvard continued to embrace Agassiz's reprehensible beliefs and provide a premier academic platform for their dispersion. Agassiz retained his professorship and served as director of the Harvard Museum of Comparative Zoology until his death in 1873. You see, this guy, Harvard literally heralds and lauds this guy at a high level. Okay? You see, in line 136, under Harvard's banner, Shaler inveighed against black people's animal nature, very low morality, and the feeble nature of their familial ties. In 1881, the Harvard Register ran a retrospective on Agassiz's work and contributions to Harvard. It asked rhetorically, great was Agassiz, but what could Agassiz have done without his army of friends? Harvard is identifying themselves as his army of friends, that actually help publish and promote slavery, even after so-called abolishment. That's why I say that is documented. Slavery really wasn't over with until 1965. 1964 and 1965. People, Negroes that were born in America after 1965, they are the first to be born as a quote-unquote free people, free to go in any public place, okay, without a sign being put in their face that they could not go into these places. Slavery was yet in existence right into the mid-60s, and the effects of it, the remnant of the effects of slavery is yet here right now, 55 years later. Let's see, line 143. Reichland's discovery made national headlines. The New York Times described the daguerreotypes as the earliest known photographs of American slaves. So there you have it. There's a problem that they are selling, or yet selling, or have been selling our ancestors from the earliest of times, selling them in all different capacities. We're more acclimated with looking at our ancestors being sold on an auction block, but you know, we're dealing with the upper echelon of elites, okay, and they are yet selling or auctioning our ancestors. That's how they value high-priced paintings of today, and they're actually selling this book. Okay, it says, perhaps in line 186, it says, perhaps Harvard believed that Renty's arresting face and semi-nude body would sell more copies, which is the name of the book was called From Sight, S-I-T-E, to Sight, S-I-G-H-T, and it cost $40. So you see, Norwich woman sues Harvard University for slavery photos. This is part of the news report from WTNH, New Haven, Connecticut, Channel 8. You can look this up yourselves. This is a comment that was made by the Agassiz. You see right here, Agassiz made a claim. Okay, he says that the brain of a Negro, Agassiz announced to the men gathered in the Charleston Library Club, is that of the imperfect brain of a 7-month infant in the womb of a white. I'll let you get that understanding, because that's really deeply ingrained racism. Deeply ingrained racism. And this is located on the WTNH website, New Haven, Connecticut. So you can go to their website, WTNH.com, and look them up, and you can type in the search engine, Norwich woman sues Harvard for slavery. You can put that in your Google search engine, and it'll come up as well. So you see here more degrading material held in the archives of Harvard University that you must pay money for in order to attend and or obtain any full use of these images. Now, there is a lady by the name of Tamara Lanier. Tamara Lanier is suing Harvard University for the yet enslavement of her ancestors. Her ancestor is Mr. Renty. And you see, this is Drana, the daughter of Jack. Okay? You see what they've done to demoralize our ancestors. And here is Jack. Okay? But then here you go, an unidentified Chinese man, or Chinese boy, fully clothed during the same exact time. Okay? This is indoctrination, people. And this is indoctrination that is by the highest level of education in this country. And I will not remove my tongue from saying they are the elite of education in this country. Harvard University was founded in the 1600s. Harvard University is the oldest official university in this country, and they are sitting on $40 billion, and they made that money on slavery, and they are yet making a profit on slavery. And it's 2019. There is no judicial or Supreme Court or or any legalities coming from the United States government to force them to remove these pictures and or diligently seek and search and find the ancestors, the living ancestors or the living family members of these deceased, of these people that they call slaves. Okay? They literally put it in the subject line that these people are called slaves. Well, that means that they are yet selling slavery. They are yet selling our ancestors. I cannot obtain this image without paying for it. I'll click on the image. This is physical proof. Look. See? Again, it's blocked. I cannot obtain this information on this individual because they blocked it. The rights are reserved by Harvard University. Okay? That means that they are yet owning the profitability of these images. Now, what if the image was worth $1 billion? What if the image was worth $5 billion? What if the image was worth $40 billion? Okay? What if these images was worth that? Are we obtaining any of these proceeds, or at least obtaining a letter in the mail from Harvard University that is offering us a free education because they have profited for 400 years? Okay, you see, a lot of you are really not getting the in-depthness of what this means. That they are yet turning over cash profit, retirement monies, annuity monies, IRAs. Okay, IRA means it's not the IRS. An IRA is the individual retirement annuity. That means that you can put money away and stash that money to yourself. That's your individual retirement annuity. An annuity gives representation that is going to last for a long time, last into your grave, and it could also be passed on to your ancestors. That's what was founded. This type of economic structure, insurance and assurance, these are the things that were founded based according to the hard bondage captivity of our ancestors, of which an educational institution like Harvard University is yet profiting on. They are yet turning a profit. Okay? You see, many of you understand money. You understand quick cash, but you're not really understanding and absorbing, okay, generational wealth. Harvard University is the wealthiest education institution in this country because of stuff that they're doing like this. They are yet profiting. They have a museum, a Peabody Museum. They have that museum, and you have to pay money in order to obtain any of this information. They are yet making a profit on slavery. This is the reason why we have to materialize our content properly. We cannot take sides with politics. We have to separate ourselves from the Democrat and from the Republican and stand by ourselves and demand that stuff like this, they must take it down, find the ancestors or the relatives that are the rightful owners, and also another thing that they must do is pay reparations, pay to repair these damages Okay, we are speaking in terms of 200 years of liquidated damages. 300, 400, 500 years of liquidated damages. Okay, you see, Harvard University is 400 years of liquidated damages. I want you to know something else. Oxford University is more than 500 years of liquidated damages. Okay, Harvard University is the Oxford University in America. They're the same exact people. Okay, I want you to get this in your understanding. There are universities that are way older, they're 800 years old, okay, that the Europeans have established. And these 800, 1,000-year-old universities, the Catholicism, their education system is way older than 1,000 years old. And they have generational wealth from slavery. So they have 1,000 years of reparations to pay. So I cannot sit back any longer in ministry, conscious of who we are, and continue to see this type of behavior, okay, this type of mockery of our ancestors, of our family members, okay? And you can see each one of these pictures, these people have clothes on, except the ones that are identified as slaves. I cannot stand, go day by day, consciously aware that these high elite institutions are actually yet abusing our people, man. They're yet abusing us as a people. So what happens is when you have other people that come to this country and they visit Harvard University and they visit the museums, or they are there to attend education, to gain an education there, they are already, or they are are by way of Harvard Institution, Harvard College. They are pre-programmed to look at the black people in this country that are the ancestors of the slaves. They're already pre-programmed by seeing this type of digital format images. Okay, they see this type of information and they are automatically programmed that they are supposed to treat our people, treat us right now the same exact way that our ancestors were treated. Okay, and continue on with the slave behavior, because Harvard is yet doing it. If Harvard, if they stand up, if they put out publication, if they put out a news brief, and they remove this, they say, look, we're not doing this anymore. They make it public. We're going to pay reparations to the slaves, or the black people in this country that are the ancestors of the slaves, the descendants of the slaves. We're going to make it right. We're going to give them a free education. You can contact us by way of via email, theasgodsmovement@gmail.com, or dabarhaqwadash@gmail.com. Again, you can contact us at theasgodsmovement@gmail.com, or dabarhaqwadash@gmail.com.